Hi everybody, Larry here for Platypod, and I am happy to be presenting to everyone the disassembly and reassembly of the Platyball for the purpose of setting the base tension of the unit. Now this is something that you will probably never have to do, but occasionally it can happen that the unit just doesn't feel like it's locking up enough when you're using your regular amounts of pressure. And in that case, this is an adjustment that if you're fairly handy, you can do at home. And if you're not, you can certainly send the unit into us for adjustment. The tools you're going to need today, by the way, are a wrench, a 4mm Allen wrench, a set of fine screwdriver bits, and a screwdriver which can be purchased for about $10 or $15 online, or certainly at your local Home Depot, Lowe's, or other hardware store. You want to take a very fine bit. I think this one is about 2mm. And you'll see there's a notch in the coin in the center here. And you want to go ahead and go into that notch and gently pry. Just try not to slip and scratch your unit. Now this coin is being held down by a layer of silicone, which keeps it adhered, but it's not really a glue. Now try not to wipe off that silicone. You'll see there's a little bit remaining right on over here. Okay, so I'm going to set that down. Next thing you're going to see is the main bolt that holds the unit together. Now this bolt is fastened very tightly. I'm going to use my 4mm Allen wrench and put that in here. And I don't think I can do that just with my bare hands. So I'm going to take a channel wrench and just adjust that so that I can grab this Allen wrench, lock the panning head, grab the panning collar, and twist. It takes a little bit of might to do this. There we go. And now I've loosened that bolt. That's probably the hardest thing we're going to have to do today. That does take a fair amount of strength. Now let's just take our Allen wrench and completely loosen this. Now be careful, because once that's all loose, this whole top stage can come off, and will come off. And let's set aside that little screw, that big screw actually. Now carefully, and I'm going to hold this sideways, there's two pins that are aligning this together, and we don't want to lose those pins. Always work over a cloth surface, so if something falls out, it's not going to end up on the floor. These pins are rather small. Hold it sideways, pull it out, and you can see the two pins here and here. Now these can completely come out and fall out, so let's be careful not to lose those. I'm going to take the entire panning stage and set that aside as well. Now we come across 6 Phillips screws that are holding the actual panning turntable to the main body of the unit. We want to loosen all 6 of those screws. I'm going to change bits over here to what is a number 1 Phillips screwdriver bit, and it's going to take a little bit of torque to do this. Make sure you put some downward pressure onto the unit so that it doesn't slip and strip the Phillips head. So using a fair amount of strength, let's loosen 1 bolt. Don't take it off completely. Then go to the opposite screw, loosen that a little bit too. Then you'll go almost opposite, off to the side, loosen that. Kind of like you would do on your car wheel, on your tires, to loosen the lug nuts. Now we want to be careful in the next step not to actually take apart the panning turntable. This is kind of packed with a silicone grease, and I don't want to remove any of that grease because we'd have to send you more to replace it, and that's kind of tricky. I'm going to take a tissue here and just kind of hold this. Still got some screws that are in place, so now you could take out the screws and set them aside one by one. That would work also. I just want to try to keep everything together here. Okay, now that whole stage comes out, and you will see at the bottom here there is a hex nut, a hex-headed screw, and that controls the locking of the panning stage. And that's important because that has to slip into the female portion of that hex, which is inside on the panning locking wheel. So I'm setting aside the entire panning stage and all those screws. Again, you could take out the screws one by one just as well, but just be very careful not to lose them. Now, to take out the panning head locking wheel, just push the wheel towards the center, and it should kind of drop right out. Now be careful, there's more silicone in here which dampens the movement of that head, of that locking wheel. Now if you look down into the unit, you're going to see in the center what I call the star bolt, because it's kind of star-shaped. That's my own term I kind of threw in there. Now that is held in place by a tiny little screw over here and a washer. So you want to, now before we do this, you want to completely loosen the Platyball. I'm going all the way till I can't push that bottom button anymore. Now it's totally loose. Now what you want to see is, first of all, there shouldn't be any jiggle between the ball and the body, and indeed over here it's not. And then what I want to do is first remove that retaining screw and washer. Okay, and then that's coming out nicely. I think the number one would have worked anyway. Now we'll pour out that screw and the washer. And now we're able to turn the star bolt. So what I'm going to do is take an Allen wrench, and what I want to do is get this, well, first I'm going to loosen it a little extra just to show you. Okay, I'm going to loosen that a little bit. That holds the entire vice grip that's inside here that grips the Platyball. So that loosens that entire unit at its base level. Now you'll see if you loosen this too much, which I'm going to do, the unit kind of just can flop right over a little. Here it's, there we go. Okay, I want to get it to a point where it's got a little bit of tension on it. So I'm going to turn this just to where I want it. Now usually from the factory setting, all you need to do is maybe tighten it up 1 notch or 2 notches. Now I'm feeling a little bit of tension on there. I think that's good. Yeah, that's good. If I try a little too much, then it just gets too tight. All right, now we're going to take the washer, put it back in place. Now you see that you could put that screw left or right. There's 2 little holes there. I chose this one because it lines up with where the star bolt ended up. There we go. And now I'm just putting this with my number 1 Phillips back in here and tightening that up. Now, before we close things up again, you just want to test the unit and make sure that it loosens and tightens nicely. So now it's fully loosened and the head still moves around very easily. That's good. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten it and make sure that it tightens nicely within about 15 or 20 presses. And now it's really good and tight. I can barely move it. If I use 2 fingers, I won't be able to move it at all. Now again, taking care not to eliminate any of the grease, I'm putting the panning head lock wheel back in. And now I have to align that little hex bolt that's on the bottom here with the locking wheel. And now you'll see the screws will kind of just all fall right into place where they started. Jiggle the locking wheel so that everything settles in nicely. And now you're just engaging the female hex in the locking wheel with the male hex on the panning stage, underneath the panning stage. Now my screws are already all lined up, so I'm going to go back and start tightening them. Not too tight, just a little bit. And again, start tightening the opposite sides of the screws. And then just go across and opposite. Isn't this fun? Okay, and again, going across until each screw is nice and tight. Very important that they're basically evenly tightened all the way around so there's no force on any one screw. Okay, so let's just clean off any excess silicone here. Okay, and then we're going to align this again and put it on. Now, you'll notice that there's one central hole for the bolt, but there's the two holes for the pins are offset. Look at the same thing on the clamp stage here. You've got the central bolt plus the offset two pins. What you want to do is line those two up so that they're on the same side. So here, now I've got the large hole on the same side closer to me and the smaller holes with the pins a little further away from me. I'm going to get those together and they pop in just real nicely. Now we take our main bolt and the Allen wrench. I do not recommend putting any Loctite or anything like that on this main bolt, or you may have a lot of trouble getting it off in the future if you need to. And then let's tighten this as tight as I can with my fingers, and then again taking my wrench, giving it some nice torque with downward pressure so I don't strip that Allen wrench. And that is done. Now, before we put the coin back on, you'll notice that there's a small hole. That hole is placed there so that you can dig in a screwdriver to be able to lift out the sealing coin if you need to. So line up, you'll see there is that notch here on the coin. Line that up with the hole. Okay, and then just some simple pressure, and that silicone holds it nicely in place until you ever need it again. And once again, let's just test and make sure we can loosen the unit fully, moves back and forth real nicely, and we can tighten it up real tight, and I can't budge that. And that's it. Thank you for joining me and learning how to disassemble the core of the Platypod and being able to make adjustments to the star bolt. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.